Hey, Strategy Simplified. Before we get into today's podcast, I want to share about a new podcast segment we're launching called After Office Hours. In this segment, we're answering listener questions live. If you have a question about breaking into consulting or just anything related to consulting, send it in today to podcast@managementconsultant.com. No question is off the table. You can either write us with your question or send us a voice note. Here's how to do that. Open the voice recorder app on your phone and record a 30 to 60 second audio message with your name, where you're calling in from, and your question. Send that to podcast@managementconsultant.com. We can't wait to hear and answer your question. Now, let's get back to today's episode. Welcome to another episode of Strategy Simplified. We're excited today to bring you Arjun's story. Arjun has a background in accounting and film, which isn't a combination you often get in the context of management consulting. It's a fun interview. He shares some fantastic networking tips that you can apply to your journey. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Welcome, Arjun, to Strategy Simplified. We're excited to hear your story of how you broke into McKinsey and just extract some insights from your journey for our listeners. So let's get straight into it. Can you start by just sharing who you are? Give us a little bit of insight into your background and where you're at right now.
Sure thing, Japheth. So my name is Arjun Naganathan, and I'm in my last year at UT. I'm in a 5-year integrated master's program in professional accounting. So I graduated with my BBA in accounting last May, and I'm graduating with my master's degree as well as my second undergraduate degree in film this coming May. I'm originally from Southern California, and I'm a big sports fan. I'm from SoCal, so I'm a Lakers fan, Rams fan, Dodgers fan, and I like to public speak and MC whenever I have the chance.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. It's not often that we hear somebody going into consulting, from an accounting and, something in the creative arts like film. Can you share a little bit about that journey? How did you decide consulting was right for you given your various interests?
Yeah, so my various interests are kind of the reason why I was drawn to consulting, because consulting is just a really good area to develop a lot of general skills that are super useful and applicable in a wide variety of places. I mean, the nature of the job is just you have tons of clients that come at you with various problems and you sit down and solve them. And that's kind of what drew me to it. I watched a couple of case interview YouTube videos and I was hooked. Especially coming off of an audit internship where I realized that audit wasn't for me. It just kind of opened my eyes to that. And of course, I'm super interested in film and sports and all of that. But I think that those creative talents, even if they might not be directly applied at McKinsey, I'm sure will help me in intangible ways at McKinsey and maybe even down the road in a more concrete way.
Absolutely. I mean, firms like McKinsey are always looking for people who think a little bit differently, think outside the box. And so that's exciting. Okay, so varied interests. You landed an offer as an analyst at McKinsey. So take me through, how did you decide McKinsey was the firm for you?
Well, they're the only ones who offered me an interview and to that end a job offer. So there was that. But beyond that, before I had received a notice of whether or not I received an interview, of course, I was looking at all the other consulting firms that were recruiting at that time. And what I love most about McKinsey was just the people there. Like I don't know how to describe it, but it's one of those things where the more people you talk to, the more of these recruitment events you go to, you kind of get a sense of what the culture of the firm and what the people are about. And I clicked most with the folks at McKinsey. So I was very happy to receive an interview from them and, of course, an offer from them.
Okay, so I hear you talk about recruiting events and talking to people at the firm, which is a huge part of getting to know firms and deciding what's right for you. Now, how did those conversations come to be where you got to chat with McKinsey folks? Was it just at recruiting events put on by UT?
Actually, none of my networking came from recruiting events at UT.
Okay.
I knew one person who worked at McKinsey who actually also worked with me at EY, and toward the end of my internship, he left and started working at McKinsey. So he was among the first people I reached out to. And then after that, I mean, of course, he helped me get to know a couple of other people from there, but just messaging people on LinkedIn, you message 50, 100 people, even if a couple of them get back to you, it's enough. You got your people that you can talk to. So I just kind of hopped on LinkedIn and started doing that.
Okay. Can you take us a little deeper in that? When you're messaging consultants at LinkedIn, are you asking for a short phone call, or is it purely on LinkedIn? What does the nitty-gritty of that look like?
Well, I always want to get people on a phone call because it's way easier to connect to someone voice to voice rather than, chat to chat. And so I would just send them a connection request, and then on LinkedIn, it gives you an option to like send a little note. I'd say, give a little blurb about who I am, why I'm connecting with them. And then I tell them I'm available from this time to this time, would love to set up a call. That way the ball's in their court. There's like one less message or a couple less messages they'd have to send back and forth before I get a response. And so, or before I get something on my calendar. And so that's what I did. And I just went on LinkedIn and I filtered it to the people that were working the jobs that I was looking for. So analyst, in the office, or broader, like the state that I was looking for. So analysts within Texas, ideally Dallas, because that's where I was applying to, but I just started messaging everybody in that.
All right. Well, yeah, you nailed it on that. And that's very much along the lines of the recommendation we give for people networking. Find them on LinkedIn. Now, we recommend finding them on LinkedIn and then sending them an email, but what you did worked as well, where you're very specific in your request for a call. And then, yeah, that's awesome. Great job. So you heard it here first, folks. Find them on LinkedIn, get a phone call, get to know them, and go from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you got the invite from McKinsey. Walk us through your process of preparing for the interview, because it's not necessarily something you can just show up to and ace. So what was your preparation process like for that?
So after I received the offer from the interview, and even before that, I kind of broke my interview preparation down into 3 big buckets: the case, the personal, and then networking. And it helped me to approach interview prep kind of like my own little case, my own little personal case interview, a little project. So because by focusing on these areas, I'd work in the mornings on the case, and then whenever I had a couple hours in the evening, I'd work on the personal side. And then in those little breaks in between, just hop on LinkedIn and see if I can continue messaging people and get to know people at the firm. Because the case measures, whether you can do the job or not. And I think that's what people focus on a lot. But you really can't underestimate the importance of the personal interview, because that indicates to your interviewer, like, hey, is this someone that we can work with? Because there's tons of people who can do the job, but there's a limited amount of people who can do the job and you're comfortable putting in front of clients, sitting on long flights with, we've all heard the airport test cliche. And then networking, I don't know if this counts as like it deserves its own little bucket, but I always thought, the more people I talked to, the better sense I got of like what the firm was all about. And so by the time I got to my interview, I hadn't spoken to any of my interviewers before, but I already felt like I kind of knew just a little bit about who they were because of all these peripheral conversations I'd had with some of their colleagues. And I think that really helped me relax and be calm on interview day, which was super valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you, in the personal, behavioral interview side of your prep, can you walk us through a little bit further what that looked like for you? We'll be right back after this quick break.
Attention consulting job seekers. Are you in the market for a consulting role? Well, look no further than Altman Salon. Altman Salon is the world's premier TMT-focused strategy consultancy, and they're hiring for open roles across 3 levels: analyst, consultant, and senior consultant. From now through February 25th, you have the chance to apply through Management Consulted. What does this mean? It means that your resume is guaranteed to be reviewed and passed on to the firm. You can learn more and apply through the link in the show notes. Again, applications close on February 25th.
Sure. So I only had one interview that I was preparing for with McKinsey, so it really streamlined my personal interview process. McKinsey does something very unique with their personal interviews. It's called a personal experience interview. And it's very different in that it's an inch wide and a mile deep. They take one experience and they drill down for 10 to 15 minutes, asking you about all the details about that. So I had prepared several such experiences, identified the specific actions that I took that made those experiences relevant to the various impact areas that they're looking for. And then I just practiced my stories. I practiced everything from the initial delivery of everything, and then as well as some of the questions that they might have asked me as follow-ups to that. And of course, I had a case coach that helped me along that process as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, this is absolute gold. And I love that you broke everything down into buckets. You'll make a great consultant.
Thank you.
And then switching from the personal interview to your case preparation, what did that look like more specifically?
So I've always been a good public speaker, and I've been a fairly good communicator. I know that about myself. And coming from a business background, I had a strong grasp of just fundamental business concepts. But that being said, the case interview is a beast. And so I read a couple of case books, the Case Interview Secrets. I watched some YouTube videos, and I realized that it's one thing to know the content, but it's another thing to be able to present it in the way that interviewers are looking for. So I really focused on learning some of the fundamental concepts of how you should structure a case. What are the relevant factors to be looking for? And then I spent a lot of time kind of polishing how I would present it. I think toward the end of my case interview prep, what I would do was, make an issue tree or framework several layers deep, and then figure out how am I going to most effectively communicate this to someone. If this was a client sitting in front of me, how would I present it to them? I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how I approached it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. If you could extract one short piece of advice for people currently preparing for either case interviews or the behavioral, personal interviews, let's say they're at the beginning of their prep process, what would you tell them to focus on first?
Okay, so if they're at the beginning of their prep process, I would say emphasize quality over quantity of preparation. It's way more useful to do a handful of cases and several drills where you really just know everything about your practice, the ins and outs of it, than doing, say, 50 or 60 cases like a lot of case books I read recommended. I know I spoke to people, and I know of people who've gotten offers at various firms that only did 5 to 10 cases, but they were able to nail them really well and really understand them, which prepared them very well. I got that piece of advice pretty early in my case prep, which I was super grateful for, and it really helped me in that regard. But yeah, quality over quantity, and don't underestimate the personal interview. Enough said there.
Okay, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I know this has been really good information. So thanks for sharing your story. What are you most looking forward to about working for McKinsey? I know it's a big name, consulting's a big industry, but if there's one or two things that you're really kind of looking forward to just for yourself, whether professional or maybe a little more personal, what would those things be?
Really, I'm just looking forward to the opportunity to work with some incredibly talented and intelligent people. I think the nature of consulting, the way they recruit from top schools, and you have to be top of your class, and even then you have to interview to get in, all of that process what results in some of the most talented people working in your field, and you're solving some of the most complex problems, really important issues from a very young age too. And so to that end, I'm just looking forward to learning a lot, not just from the client work, but also from the people around me. And of course, traveling is going to be nice too. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Ready to get that status on all the airlines. Hopefully. Okay. Well, Arjun, thanks again. This has been really good. I'm going to switch right now from McKinsey to you. I want to hear just a little bit more about you, get to know you. Can you tell me about, has there ever been a moment in your life where you were just facing an obstacle and you thought, how am I going to get over this? How did you persevere through that moment?
Well, I'm going to bring it right back to casing because I think that's the most relevant obstacle. So a little bit about me. I'm in the accounting program, and for the longest time, I kind of just said, okay, I'm just going to do public accounting. We have the University of Texas, a pretty well reputed program. I got an offer from EY, and I interned with them and everything. But after that experience, I just realized that accounting wasn't for me, and I hadn't really explored any other options. And so my girlfriend, who's also in the accounting program, felt the same way, and she's a million steps ahead of me in these things. She figured out, I'm going to apply to this consulting firm, and she got a consulting offer with PwC. And as I was helping her with that process, I thought, wow, consulting's pretty cool. And then as the more I read about it, the more I read about MBB, I realized that this is a really tough industry to break into. People have been grinding since freshman year, and here I am, like going on my 5th year of school, and I'm so behind. So in that short time, like I fixed my resume up, I started practicing interviews, I set up phone calls with people, and it seemed like such an impossible task at the very beginning because of all the work that was ahead of me. But I knew that if I worked my absolute hardest and outworked anybody else in the short time period that I had, I'd give myself a chance, and I think it paid off.
You definitely gave yourself a chance. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that even if you're a little late to the game, there's still hope, and you can still set yourself up for success. Last question. Talk to me about film. What are you digging right now? What's been just inspiring you or been fun for you lately?
Well, I love Ozark, and I'm so stoked that Ozark season 4 is out. I'm only a couple episodes in, and I can already tell it's gonna be a journey to the finish. I'm very excited for that. And then I just started watching the Neymar documentary yesterday, actually, that Netflix released. Really, really cool. I've been getting into documentaries just a little bit lately, and it's so interesting. Like, I feel like Neymar is one of the most misunderstood athletes in the world, and the docuseries does a good job of portraying his side of the story.
That's cool. Okay, I'll have to check those out. I know I've seen a little bit of Ozark, but I haven't gone through any of the full seasons, so I have to check them out. Well, Arjun, thanks for coming on Strategy Simplified. It's been a joy to get to know your journey and just hear a little bit about the tactics you implemented to break into one of the toughest firms in the world to break into. So
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Again, congrats, and we wish you nothing but the best. Thanks for listening to this episode with Arjun. We had a great time, and we hope you did too. If you need help breaking into consulting, we got you. We have a team of amazing case coaches that can help take you from case noob to case boss, or if you're already decent, from good to great, to get you over the hump and help you land that offer. More details are in the show notes. We'll see you next week.